Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Morgan Podcast. I'm Junior Jack Henry Palazzo. I'm here with Senior Will Scopa and Sophomore Declan Haverkamp, and we're here to recap the first four rounds of the March Madness tournament for you guys, and then give you a little preview to the Final Four. So we're gonna start in the East region.
Yeah, so starting off in the East, pretty much the region of Hall of Fame coaches, or what feels to be soon to be Hall of Fame coaches. There's so many good games in this region. It started off with Duke Siena in the 1v16 game. Siena pretty much led most of the way against Duke with a 71-65 win. It was the first time a number 16 seed was ever winning by double digits at halftime against a number 1 seed. And then following that, in the 2v15 game, that was also another almost near upset. If it wasn't for Terrace Reed Jr.'s 31 points, 27 rebounds, I'm not even sure UConn escapes the first round, and we saw where they eventually ended up. And then also in the first round, or rather in the second round, we saw that St. John's versus Kansas game, which Kansas or St. John's got up as many as 14. They got up to that 56-42 lead. And then with about 8 minutes left, it was Kansas that was able to come back, tie the game at 65 with 13.1 seconds left. And we saw a moment that was presumably going to be the best moment out of the East region when Dylan Darling hit the buzzer beater layup to lead St. John's to advance to the Sweet 16. And then we got to the Sweet 16 there where we saw Duke St. John's and UConn Michigan State. And Duke St. John's, it was pretty much the same story for Duke. They kept getting down in games, trailing in games, and St. John's was able to extend its lead to as many as 10 early in the second half. And Duke wasn't guarding the three-point line at all, and St. John's was really making them pay. Duke then made a good adjustment, though. They switched to their 3-2 zone, and it really slowed down St. John's offense, and also allowed Duke to rest a little bit on defense, and it allowed them to lead to better offense with more energy because they weren't exerting themselves as much on the defensive end of the floor. And Duke was able to pull out with an 80-75 win. They advanced to the Elite Eight. And in UConn Michigan State, UConn shot out of a cannon against Michigan State. They opened up 25-6 and then pretty much controlled the game the rest of the way. Michigan State came back all the way down from that 19-point deficit. I think they took the lead at one point around 44-43. But from there, UConn has played many close games this season, and they were just able to get another close win against a really good team, which set up that Duke-UConn Elite Eight matchup, which did not disappoint. Coach Shire for Duke, really had a fantastic game plan against UConn. He shut down Hurley's offense, unlike any coach has really ever done since Hurley has installed that new offense. Alex Karaban, who was averaging 22 points the entire tournament, had just 5 points that game. They really shut him down. And the story of that first half against Duke-UConn was pretty much Terrace Reed versus the Boozer Boys. Terrace Reed has really been carrying UConn throughout this entire tournament, and the Boozer Boys had a terrific first half as well. I mean, UConn, they couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat. They started off the game shooting 1 of 18 from 3. They could not hit a shot at all. They were just force-feeding it inside to Terrace Reed, who really kept them afloat in the game, and they only trailed by 15 at halftime after really not a stellar first half. It is worth pointing out that UConn got called for 5 times as many fouls as Duke in the first half, which is some foreshadowing to an event that happened later in the game where Coach Hurley definitely let his emotions show to the ref. And then the second half came out, and UConn just kind of scratched and clawed their way back into the game. They had held Duke to 28 points in the second half, and Terrace Reed really started to pick it up on defense. He matched up with Cam Boozer. That was the adjustment UConn made. And, they contained Cam Boozer for the most part. It's hard to contain a player of Cam Boozer's caliber, but Reed did a really good job on him. And then after starting off 1 of 18 from 3, the shots finally fell for UConn. Demery hit a couple clutch shots in the corner. Karaban drilled one to cut it to 1. And now it's 70-69. UConn's came all the way back. Duke, Cam Boozer had the ball. He got inside. He drive with his left hand. He spun back to his right. He put it up and in. And Duke was able to lead 72-69. And then I thought Coach Shire did for Duke what you should do when you're up 3. They waited for UConn to get into their action. Once UConn started to get into their action, that's when they fouled Silas Demery. Demery went to the free throw line. He went 1 for 2, and now it's 72-70. UConn's trailing with 10 seconds left. And Duke inbounds the ball. It was Dame Sarr inbounding to Cam Boozer. Cam Boozer was in the corner. 2 defenders fly at him, so he does what he should. He should reverse it back to the inbounder and Dame Sarr. Dame Sarr does what you do when you're breaking full court pressure. He advances it up to the middle of the floor where it's Caden Boozer. Caden Boozer now sees 2 guys flying at him. So in the moment, he's got to make a decision here. Duke's best free throw shooter is in the front court, and Isaiah Evans. So he decides to pass that ball. And, Caden Boozer's been getting a lot of slack for that. But I actually agree with that decision. I think he should have advanced the ball up the court. You think about a 10-second violation there. When you see 2 defenders coming at him, UConn also had possession. So if UConn was able to successfully trap, they could have tied it up. and then it would have been UConn ball anyway, or they could have got a steal. So I'm actually behind Caden Boozer advancing the ball. Obviously, it didn't go his way. Stemmer got the deflection. Mullins corralled it off to Karaman, back to Mullins, and the rest is history. Mullins hit the shot, and UConn's on to the Final Four. But I think we should just discuss that, really. Do we think Caden Boozer, should he have just held on to the ball, or should he have advanced it up the floor?
I think in a situation like that, you got to get the ball across court. 10 seconds is huge, and you can't give UConn the shot to win the game right there. Although they did get the shot to win the game, you got to get the ball across half court. And like you said, Isaiah Evans, great free throw shooter, and he's at the other end of that court, and that's where Boozer's trying to get the ball. So in my eyes, it was the right decision, but it didn't lead to success.
I mean, my philosophy is with that situation is you're the only one that can control yourself. You can't control if other people are going to make free throws in that clutch situation. So I think he should have held on to the ball. I think he should have been the one to get fouled because he himself knows if he can make free throws or not. He doesn't know if Isaiah Evans is going to make those free throws, and he doesn't know what's going to turn out after that. So I think the safer decision was to hold on to the ball, maybe start dribbling away, or try and get past them and get over half court.
Obviously, Caden Boozer throws it away. Braylon Mullins hits the shot, one of March Madness's all-time moments, in my opinion. We have other shots recently. I think it was 10 years ago. Chris Jenkins for Villanova hit the shot to win the national championship. Way back in 1983, Lorenzo Charles for NC State had a dunk to win the national championship. There was Christian Laettner in 1992. In the Elite Eight against Kentucky, Grant Hill threw it like 3/4 of the court down for Laettner, who turned around at the free throw line and made the shot. Where do you think this Braylon Mullins shot ranks amongst the all-time March Madness moments, really?
I think if you look back, I believe it was 2017. Luke May in the Elite Eight hit the three to give North Carolina the lead with just about the same amount of time left. I think that's very comparable to this. And as we know, North Carolina went on to win the national title game that year, and they beat arguably the best team in the country, which was Kentucky.
I think it really depends on if UConn is able to advance to the national championship and possibly beat a team like Arizona or Michigan, who's looking really good down the stretch. I think if they are able to do that, this shot goes down in history as one of the greatest. And if not, maybe this shot fades away in 5 or 10 years.
Last thing I want to talk about with UConn is Mullins hits the shot, and Hurley at this point, he's got the jacket on one shoulder, and he has this moment with the official where they actually end up head-to-head. He kind of headbutts him a bit, gives him a stare down. The ref came out and pretty much said that nothing really happened. They were just talking. I didn't see the lips move, so I just want to know what you guys make of that. And really, should Hurley have gotten a technical foul there? And then right then, UConn's shot, it wouldn't have mattered.
In my opinion, no technical needs to be given in that spot. There's 0.4 seconds, and you're not going to end a team season on free throws, especially considering, from what I believe, Hurley didn't say anything. I've seen the clip multiple times, and it seems if Hurley was just doing what Hurley does, just staring him down. Surprisingly, not saying anything, but I guess that was smart if you look back at it. But no, I don't think a technical foul, with 0.4 seconds left in a 1-point game in the Elite Eight is worth it.
I mean, I think Dan Hurley is one of the most mentally insane people in the entire world. I think to do this with your team up 1 with 0.4 seconds left in the game, something has to be physically or mentally wrong with you to do this, to risk your team's season. But it turned out fine, and as both of them said, nothing was said between the ref and Hurley, so I guess it's okay.
All right, moving on to the South region. We saw one of the bigger upsets in the entire tournament in this round, with VCU beating North Carolina in overtime, 82-78. Terrence Hill Jr. had a career-high 34 points to lead a 19-point comeback, which was stemmed in the second half. 14:58 left on the clock. North Carolina's up 56-37. VCU, for the final 20 minutes and 2 seconds of that game, regulation and overtime, would go on a 45-22 run to close the game. In regulation, they hit 15 of their last 19 shots, and this was their 17th win out of their last 18 games. And Hill tied the game with a big layup with 11 seconds to go, and in overtime he hit the game-winning three with 15 seconds left, and he had 23 points in the second half. We go on to the round of 32, another huge upset in this tournament. Iowa taking down Florida. On Florida, the defending national title winners. And then we saw one of the better players in this entire tournament come from Iowa. Bennett Sturts, the transfer from Drake, former Division II player. He's followed his coach, Ben McCollum, the whole way. This was a nail-biter the whole way, back and forth. And Falgaris for Iowa hits a huge corner hits a huge corner three with 4.5 seconds to go to take the lead. Florida gets the ball back. They never get a shot up for the win. This is the first time Iowa advanced to the Sweet 16 since 1999. They would go up against arch rival Nebraska, who this is their first time making it to the Sweet 16. In Nebraska's round of 32 game, arguably one of the best games of the entire tournament against Vanderbilt. Just an unbelievable game. Price Sandfort, one of the best players in this entire tournament, 15 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal. Braden Fager hit a huge go-ahead layup with 2.2 seconds left, and then that's when Vanderbilt would get the ball back. Tyler Tanner shoots a half-court shot that, I thought that shot was going in. I think it hit every single possible inch it could hit on the rim.
As close as you can get.
Literally as close as you could get. Rolls around the cylinder and then rolls out. Nebraska, that's their second all-time tournament win, with the first one coming 2 days prior. And, they go up against Iowa in the Sweet 16. And in that matchup, Iowa, another huge upset. They stay hot. Sturts has 20 points. And then at the end of the game, a big mistake from Nebraska where they only have 4 defenders on the court in a big situation late, which causes Falgaris to be the hero again. Hits a wide open 3-point play, layup. He's fouled at the end of it. Big free throw after. And Nebraska had a 10-point lead early in this game, but Iowa tied it 4 times, but never. Sturts, he's hit some huge shots in this tournament. He's been great watching him come from Division II, being a national champion there, following his coach to Drake. They made the tournament last year, and now coming to Iowa, going all the way to the Elite Eight. They would go on to win this game. Nebraska in the second half was 9 for 32 from the field. They shot 24 3-pointers and only made 6 of them. Staying in the Sweet 16, Houston, Illinois, another great game there. I thought this was the game Illinois really showed who they were. This is by far their best win of the season. They're one of the best offensive teams in the country. They only put up 66 points, but they played their best defensive game of the year against the defending national runner-ups against Houston and held them to just 55 points. Huge performance from Keaton Wagler, the Big Ten freshman of the year, 13 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, and 2 blocks. He actually was the South Region MVP. Talk about a tournament he had, and they held future lottery pick of Houston, Kingston Flemings, to just 11 points, which was a huge defensive performance. Illinois will now play Iowa for their 11th appearance ever in the Elite Eight. And this game was just 2 miles from Houston's campus. They were playing in their backyard, watching the game. There were significantly more Houston fans in the building, but they were quiet fast. As they weren't really able to do much. Illinois was just up 1 point at the start of the second half, but they went on a huge 17-0 run, stretching the lead 44-26 with 11:20 to go, where Uzan would hit a big 3 that would end the drought for Houston, where they would go 7 minutes without scoring. Chase McCarty hit consecutive 3-pointers to get Houston within 6 points, but Illinois would go on another run, go up 8 on an 8-0 run. Wagler and Isevich hitting big back-to-back threes, put Illinois up 58-41, where they will ride that to their victory. And then in the Elite Eight, Illinois, Iowa, 2 Big Ten teams matching up, and Keaton Wagler, what a performance, 25 points, 2 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal. And then Stojakovic, 17 points, 5 assists and 1 steal. 5 rebounds and 1 steal. And, Ivicic, who he hit the big 3 in the last game, 13 points, 4 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 blocks. And then Mrkovic with 9 points, 12 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and a block. Just unbelievable performances across the board. This Illinois team, they're the tallest team in the entire country, and it's really not close. They're made of a lot of Eastern Europeans. That's what their team's made up of. And Illinois is going to the Final Four for the first time in 21 years, where they're going to take on UConn. And the South Region all-tournament team, Keaton Wagler averaged 18 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists. And then some more guys from Illinois, Mrkovic, Stojakovic, and then from Iowa, Bennett Sturts, and then from Nebraska, Price Sandfort. And now here are my questions for you guys coming in to the Final Four. Illinois hasn't beaten UConn since 1938. They played 2 years ago in the Elite Eight in the infamous 30-0 run UConn game, where UConn went on to win the national title game. And then they played last year at Madison Square Garden where UConn won 74-61. How do you think past results will play an impact in this game, if at all?
Here's the thing. UConn played Illinois early in the year, but those teams were completely different. Last time UConn played Illinois, their offense was operating entirely different from how it is now. They were really relying on the perimeter scoring, and now seemingly every possession down the floor, Terrace Reed has to touch the basketball. They're really offense is running through more so Reed, whereas it was running through the guards earlier in the season. Same thing with Illinois. Last time UConn and Illinois met, Keaton Wagler was kind of a non-entity. He wasn't really the player he is now, and he's really come onto the scene. Last time UConn was playing Illinois, the entire offense was running through Kylan Boswell, and now it's Wagler's really running the show for Illinois. So I do not really think past results will play too much of a factor. You mentioned the 30-0 run game from 2 years ago. I'm not sure any Illinois players that are in the rotation this year were on the team then, so I do not think past results will play too much of a factor in the upcoming matchup.
I also don't think it'll play too much of a factor. I think that Hurley's got his guys. He's going to have his guys ready for this game. I also think that Illinois' size will play a factor into how Terrace Reed plays, and I think it all depends on that, how Terrace Reed plays. If Terrace Reed goes out and dominates, and he is really good, UConn will win this game by a large margin. But if Illinois is able to stop them, or able to stop him, it'll give them a chance to be in this game.
Well, that leads me to my next question. Can the height of Illinois and Kim Murkovich contain Terrence Reed, who is playing unbelievable in this tournament? Can they contain him throughout this game?
It'll be interesting to see how Illinois guards Terrace Reed. Some teams have been throwing double teams at him, and Reed's been happy to pass out of him. I don't know if Illinois will have to double team because they have the size to match up against him. Terrace Reed is pulling out some moves in the post that he just wasn't doing, even most recently in the Big East Championship game against St. John's. Terrace Reed, Zuby Ejiofor was just sitting on Terrace Reed's left shoulder, knowing that he was going to go with the right hook every time. And now Terrace Reed's more than happy of going to, the right hook and then spinning back with his left hand. I think Terrace Reed's game has really evolved. And, I'm not going to say Shaquille O'Neal, but he's been really unstoppable this tournament.
I think it's all going to depend on how Illinois reacts. I think Terrace Reed knows what he has to go out and do, and Hurley knows how to get him the ball, and everybody else on the team knows how to get him the ball. So at this point, it's about what Illinois is going to do. Are they going to double team him? Are they going to leave him one-on-one in the post? How are they going to switch their matchups if he is going off or if he's not so good? It's all about what Illinois is reacting with.
And that leads me to my last question. Keaton Wagler has been unbelievable in this tournament. He's given, I don't want to say Walter Clayton-esque, but it's kind of starting to look like that. He could take a game over. Can Keaton Wagler take this game over from the jump?
Here's the thing with UConn. Their best perimeter defender is probably Silas Demery Jr., who will be matched up against Keaton Wagler. But Demery's been playing through injury, and he just really hasn't looked like the same player. Lateral movements have been okay with him. He's been pretty solid on the defensive end. But Keaton Wagler has really just been a terrific player. He gets to every spot on the floor he wants to. He knows how to get to his spots, and he really plays with his own pace. No one really speeds him up. I think if Illinois is to come out on top of this game, it's going to be a big night from Keaton Wagler. And he'd probably have to have, point scoring in the 20s to give Illinois a good shot to get over UConn, who has the experience in the Final Four.
I'm really interested to see how the pressure plays into how he plays. He's never been in this situation before. Final Four game, big game against UConn, a chance to get into the national championship. I'm really wondering if he can still put up the numbers that he's been putting up with all the pressure on him to be the number one guy.